Major League Journeymen plus one, our steady contributor who takes everything that we do and just puts it on steroids, cleans it up, packages it up into a nice pretty bow for us with a nice pretty bow. Chris Wingert joining the pod today, back in, head of Rock Nation North America, crushing it, brunching with Jay-Z, and wasting his time with these three Muppets. Chris, we are happy to have you. Welcome back to the pod.
I'm resistant towards anything that's live. I prefer to go after or a week after the show and make some critiques.
What happened? What happened to your text where you were critiquing the pod? You know, we haven't gotten very many critique texts from you. I'm a little bit.
I didn't know if I didn't know if we were still live with that or
we love it.
How it went over. All right.
Wing, we're in the trust tree. You're in the trust tree.
What happened to the circle? I thought we were in the nest.
I'll tell you what what we are doing today though is recapping how difficult it is to predict favorites in Major League Soccer. We did an episode at the beginning of the season when Dax was toiling away in preseason, doing once-a-days, clearly not enough practice for the Atlanta United side, as evidenced this past weekend. But the three of us, Gordo, Wings, and myself, were trying like mad to predict who is going to be excellent this year. And with some success, some of the obvious picks and some of the ones that are really kind of baffling at this point, how some of these clubs are struggling as much as they are basically a third through the season, right? So we're recapping. We're going to be critical of our picks, but also I think we need to talk through some of the surprises of the year. And I wanted to start with you, Wings, and this is more of just a general statement. Now that we've seen a good body of work from these clubs, is there a club in your mind that sticks out as the surprise of the season? Who is at this point showing you either positively or negatively? Just are you baffled by them?
Probably have one on both sides. And I mean this as a compliment in the best way possible, but our boy Pops in Salt Lake. I mean, I can't, they're flying right now. And I have to say, it shows what a true 9 goal scorer can do, right? The RSL camp and us has-beens or never were's, is that a thing? We've been talking about it forever. And we felt like they really haven't had a true 9 goal scorers since Sabo.
And Robbie Finley, right? The 1-2 punch.
Yeah, and I think Sabo was there a year or two after Rob, and I think it was almost 10 years ago. I think his last season was probably 2015 or 2016. So 8-10 years ago, he haven't had a true 9, and Chicho was showing the difference in what that can do. And he's been fantastic. Obviously, I'm not in the locker room, but it sounds like he's been all in. And for me, he's doing a little bit of the Harry Kane / in our league, what we were talking about Cucho does so well, where he drops in and he starts the attack, not just finishes. But he's been fantastic in that role. And they find themselves in first place, which is absolutely wild to me. So on a positive
first
note,
place in the Western Conference for RSL. Nobody had that on their bingo card, and certainly none of us had them atop the West. So that's a good shout. Who do you got on the other side?
On the other side, and I have to reference my notes here, but unfortunately it has been Dallas. They've just been disappointing, and I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, easy to blame it on some injuries, which they had trouble with last year. But still, even with the injuries, I thought they were going to be. I thought they were going to be better. I thought they were going to be able to grind out some results. And they've had troubles on both sides. They've had last year. Their defense was incredible. They weren't letting up any goals. So even when they weren't scoring, they were still managing to get results. And this year, it's been a bit of both. They've had trouble scoring, but they've been leaking a few goals as well. So,
Dax, have you played Dallas yet?
No, we haven't played them this year. I wanted to ask you, Wayne, because I've been surprised about Dallas as well. It seems to me like Nico, he's kind of switched up his tactics and his preferred personnel and formation. So they went to 3 in the, because I know you have a guy or two on Dallas, right? So yeah. What do you have? I mean, obviously not any inside info into why, but what was the thought process, at least in your head? Like, why did they go from they were like more of a 4-3-3 to a 3-4-3, this new, which, by the way, this is for me one of the main takeaways. I can get into it later, but I think this new 3-4-3 formation, how Columbus is playing, it's kind of like how Bayer Leverkusen play in Germany. Like, it's very in vogue right now, like very in vogue. I think I've seen more teams play this formation this year than ever in MLS history, and to varying degrees of success. But I think for Dallas, we've seen that it hasn't been successful. And I don't know, you probably have been able to watch them a little bit more than us here at the Journeymen, but what was the reason for that change? Do you have any idea, and why is it not working out?
I don't know the original reason, other than I think they were looking at their personnel and thought that it could be a good fit. Farfan on the left is fantastic going forward, but they like Junqua as well. And then my guy Nkosi Tafari in the middle, and Sebastian Ibiaga on his right. And then obviously they brought in Omar, who was on the pod, to be able to play some good minutes and provide some real leadership there. And then they had even talked about Areola as like almost a right wing back a little bit,
right,
which I think could be a really good spot for him with his qualities. And then they spent big money, brought in a legit number 9. Is it Musa?
Musa. Yeah. I saw him. I saw them play in St. Louis, and he is a handful, man.
He has real qualities, Gargs. I'm with you on that. He's got a little bit of everything. He's big. He can hold it up. He's got pretty good speed for a big guy. He's shown moments. Their win, not this past weekend, but the week before, his first touch and goal that he scored, I mean, fantastic, like top level. Then speaking to the guys on the club, a couple of them, they think, he has a chance to be the real deal. We see that sometimes, right, guys? Where, and by the way, he is scoring a bit, but sometimes it takes a season to get 6 months or a season to really, come into your own and get settled. Unfortunately, Jesus has had some injuries again. They've just been, Pomical hasn't played much. Some of these guys that have been, steady guys for them. Again, I don't want to create too many excuses, because I think the lineups that they've been putting out, Dax, to your point, are still quality lineups where they should be winning games. I can't put my finger on it, but I think going back to your original question, I think I'm guessing, I didn't speak to Nico about it, but I'm guessing I came from a bit of that.
Yeah.
And it just unfortunately hasn't panned out. And then what happens, guys? When it doesn't pan out, how long do you ride with it and trust it? And when do you hit the panic button and try to switch it up? And is it too soon, right? Because now you're going away from everything you worked on in preseason and leading into the beginning of the year. And then what ends up happening naturally is your guys, the players, they lose a little bit of faith in it because they see you wavering, right? So it's just that domino effect.
It's interesting. We had Omar on the pod, and me and Gordo were chatting with him, and we actually asked him specifically about FC Dallas. Who are they now? Like, they were this club that was developing young talent and giving all these young guys, an opportunity. And like, so who are they now? And he was like, I don't know. And it was like, all right, well, to your point, I think that was somewhat representative of maybe where they are and why they haven't quite hit their stride. Gordo, who's the biggest surprise in your mind? Is it the group on your hat, or is it somebody different?
It is, dude. And this is just, I don't know if we're getting into this next, but like for 4 guys that played in the MLS as long as we did, to be so wrong in our predictions, because what we should have done is we should have taken the bottom 3 from the year before, and then we should have put them at the top, because that's essentially, and just flip-flopped them. But I thought we were talking about a new league. I thought this was a new league. I thought teams that were good were going to stay good, like LAFC and Seattle, who were all pumping up.
All the favorites.
Yeah, all the
You went chalk. Everybody went chalk.
Yeah, it's just it's still newsflash.
Hey, can we,
same league.
Gordo, before you answer, can we have a little fun here? Because I obviously missed this pod, which is looking pretty good for me right now. Can I run through our preseason predictions for the people listening, just so they can see how wrong we were?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I think we've got a combined 1,500 games played in Major League Soccer between us 4, and yet we still can't figure this out because these are hilarious.
We threw up massive air balls.
Is there anybody high-fiving each other more than the league office? This is exactly how we planned it. More parody.
Wingert.
Teams.
Wingert, let me start with you, because it is not pretty for you on one side, and it's looking really good for you on the other side. In the West, this was your top 3. FC Dallas, which swing and a miss.
They're in 13th.
Houston.
How many?
So you went FC Dallas 1, Houston 2, LAFC 3. Okay.
You guys are around borderline just making the playoffs, right? Is that
LAFC hasn't.
And then
LAFC has been a
obviously
little inconsistent. But then in the East, you went Columbus, Cincy, Miami. So you look like a genius.
3 good picks.
That's decent.
You look like a
decent.
genius.
I mean, that's also, going into the NCAA tournament and, picking all the number 1 seeds.
Here, let's
Of course you did. Gordo,
I'll take it.
not looking much better for you, my friend, but you went chalk and obviously one of your picks looks bad. You went LAFC 1, Seattle 2, Galaxy 3. And I don't know why, but Gargs gave you a token 4th pick, which you went Houston in the West. So 2 out of 4 look good.
Because Gargs doesn't want me to be right ever. And so I actually got one.
I give you more options to win.
I literally threw a dart with my eyes closed at the Galaxy just because I was hoping they were going to have a good year. And it's been that way since. So I'm glad about that.
Well, listen, here you go, Gordo. Houston's in 8th, dude. They're still in a playoff position. That's not an awful pick.
Listen, none of my picks were awful. Let's just get that clear. They weren't awful. They were all well thought.
After Dax finishes with Garg's picks, let's go back to Seattle, because that's got to be a talking point.
Gordo, in the East, I'm going to swallow my tongue here and not speak a little bit on some of your picks in the East, because you went Columbus 1, Cincy 2, Atlanta 3.
Your boy's not helping you out, Gordo.
I'm not helping you out any. I'm sorry. I apologize. Hand up.
Again,
we'll turn that around for you.
Again, listen, I know that when my boy Dax is playing, you're one of the last guys I know in the league. And my kids love you because you had us at your house. I used to live at your house, all these things, Uncle Dax. So I knew I was going to be watching a lot of Atlanta FC games. So I wanted to kind of boost it up. Let me just say this about the East. I played a total like 6 games in the East, after in Toronto. And I'm not sure of what division Chicago's in, but I played, maybe 10 total. And then I was out. So I know nothing about the East Coast, and I don't want to know anything about the East Coast Conference.
The East Coast Conference. What is that?
Atlanta FC in the East Coast Conference.
Hey, that's better than when New York Red Bulls won the East Coast Conference one year, and we're in the final.
They won the West, I think, actually, but good.
Oh, the West. That's what I mean. The West.
Gordo, we won the East.
You won the East. Real Salt Lake won the East and then played us in the final.
Yes. That was when the MLS playoffs were actually fun and chaotic.
Oh man,
and the Rapids made the playoffs in the East, and then ended up playing us in FC Dallas West. Yeah. So that we don't have to get into that. But anyways, Gordo, I'm gonna make your picks look really good because 2 of your 3 picks look great right now.
I still believe
your Atlanta pick is going to come good. I promise you that. Let's go to Gargs, our fearless host. Gargs went Western Conference. Seattle 1, Houston 2, Vancouver 3.
Ooh, Vancouver. Nice hit.
He's batting about 500, very average.
Nice hit
He's
with
got a really
Vancouver.
good pick, a not so good pick, and then a pretty bad pick, which obviously we'll get into Seattle, but not terrible. This is where it gets really fun for Gargs and Gordo. I want you to tee off here. This is your moment, okay, buddy?
Just fell off a cliff.
Gargs went Orlando 1,
Ugh.
Columbus 2, New England 3.
Oh, buddy.
Have fun, buddy. Have fun.
Oh, buddy.
Ugh.
I can't even. That actually is what I expected out of Gargs. I expected it. So I'm not even surprised. There's no like immediate reaction because I was like, I knew it would happen. The smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, always.
Really wrong.
It's almost the kiss of death, right? If Gargs picks your team, instantly at the bottom.
It's like you bet. He's like the guy you bet whatever he didn't take, and then
this is fun. This is fun.
Is
for
that
me.
drink?
I told you guys I'd be the
Gargs'
peanut
drink?
gallery, and it's really fun. I'm enjoying this.
Here's what I can say for myself. The Orlando pick was, I'm surprised about Orlando, genuinely, but I think that New England was kind of a roll of the dice here. You didn't know, I didn't know what we were going to get, but you're bringing in a new coach. You're kind of hopefully getting out of the toxic situation that was the end of last year and freshen that up with some really good players. I mean, they're stocked full of good players and a group that has a ton of experience in the league, and it is not working. I mean, we said this, I don't know, what did I say? I asked this question what feels like 10 weeks ago. Is Caleb Porter on the hot seat? And
I was just going to say that.
Any better?
Let's ask our guest, because I was just going to say that. Wings, we talked about Caleb Porter being on the hot seat. We were kind of across the board saying, no, I didn't believe that he was. You got to give him some length. But like, it's funny how this happens in professional sports. Things stack up real fast, dude. Like, my opinion now, they're sitting in last place. So Wings, give us your take on that.
I hate to say it, but this could be one of those things that goes down to like Robert Kraft. If you have an owner that is super hands-on and dead set on winning and getting the pressure from the fans, then they're going to force your hand. If that was, I don't know, Atlanta or LAFC or, one of these teams where their fans are on top of it and they're breathing down your neck, and this is the only team that the owner has, or it's a big deal to him, I think things could be different. And I hate to say this.
So you're saying that Robert Kraft is not that guy, doesn't care, and won't push on Kurt to make an adjustment?
Yeah, I don't want to say he doesn't care at all. And it seems a lot of these owners that I think are not pushing the envelope for us in MLS are some of the originals. So I gotta be careful with what I say, because if it wasn't for some of these owners, we wouldn't even have a league, right? But at the same time, there are a lot of these, what I would call new owners, that are pushing the envelope and trying to get everybody else to keep up. And some of the owners that are kind of part of the old school, it at least feels like a bit more of status quo. That they're not looking to mix things up. And if you come across a few losses, they're not going to pull the trigger right away. You just don't have, and you just don't have that pressure from the community, from the fans.
Gordo, has your position changed? Do you feel like Porter is on the hot seat, or do you still say no? Because I think your position was, to me, was you're crazy for even suggesting it. You got to give them a window in the summertime, get their players in, all that stuff. But I still look back on our conversation, and it's not like they're dying to get new players in. Like they have a ton of talent in that roster.
Yeah, it's just amazing how fast things stack up. And I'm not changing my position. I think he deserves to go through a window and see what they're doing. To your point, dude, I mean, what will they do? We don't know what they're going to do. So I haven't seen any rumors of transfers or anything like that. And so we'll see. But with that being said, I feel the pressure for him. just
Yeah,
being
for
at
sure.
the bottom of the table and knowing how it is when you're in a locker room and you're coaching a team on a week-to-week basis that cannot get any results. And you are you're coming from a Bruce Arena stretch who they were top 3 in the East for 5 years? And they had a really good team. And you got one of the best players in the entire league, and you have a supporting cast around them. So with that being said, somebody's already won with your roster, and you're
Which
not.
I feel like makes it as these weeks go by, it makes it tougher for Porter or Kurt, both of them, to say, hey, we need new players.
Right.
We need to go out and spend more on new players because they're not good enough or they don't work or whatever. New England 2-7-1 with 7 goals for, 18 goals against, with the same roster essentially as last year.
Guys, you know the second team head coaches, right? Of New England.
Is it Richie Williams?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Interesting move by the staff. After he was the interim head coach, then I thought they fired him, then rehired.
I think everybody's
the second team,
right? Yeah, that sounds like a legal decision. That sounds like a legal decision than anything else.
My take on New England is that they just got a big get right win over the Giants in Chicago, so they're feeling pretty good about themselves. Chicago, man, that's a whole nother can of worms I don't want to open. But I got 2 things for you, Wing, on your guys' picks. 2 things that I wanna touch on. You guys were pretty solid in choosing Columbus and Cincy. I think we can all agree they're the class of the Eastern Conference, and it kind of goes to my point about the new in vogue formation of playing with 3 center backs and kind of giving a freer role to your attacking 3 players. I think those are 2 of the best teams in the league, and they've been able to get the best out of Cucho and out of Lucho Acosta by being able to play in these formations. And Wilfred Nancy is proving again and again and again that he's one of the best coaches in MLS, not just this year, but I think since its inception, the things that he's doing, teams are copying that, and teams are trying to play more like him. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on from the West was Salt Lake, Pablo Mastroeni. We touched on this a little bit, but I don't think people realize he had his entire coaching staff revamped, and probably against his wishes. So I don't know that for sure. But what I do know is that you keep your head coach and you say, we're giving you a whole new assistant coaching staff. When they made the playoffs last year, right?
Yeah.
I think they're the only team to make it 3 years.
3 years in a row.
And they were top. Weren't they the 3 seed? Not just squeaking in.
Last year. Not last year.
Yeah, they were.
Guys,
yeah.
I don't know, but all I know is that could torpedo a team, and that could really put a question marks in a coach's head about how much I'm being supported or whatever. Pablo has done a fantastic job, and this guy should be talked about more as being one of the best coaches in the league, because I know you guys are close with him. I'm not as close with Pablo. I know him personally, but
yeah,
for me, the job that he is doing should be talked about as a top 2 or 3 job in MLS right now. Have you gone through their roster? Have you seen?
Hey, Jax.
The players playing?
I have a question for you guys. Sorry, Gordo. Cut you off.
No, sir.
I want you guys to answer this. You guys know, basically, we had a very similar team, right? From 2008 to 2013 and RSL. You guys all know that group of players very well. How many guys on this current roster would start on that team? This current team, RSL in first place, how many guys would start on that team?
Arango.
Maybe 2, Arango and Ramondo. Or I'm answering both sides of that.
Yeah, what do you mean?
No.
What do you mean? He's retired.
Arango would start. I still like Justin Glad. I do.
Are you Gargs, are you taking him over Borchers or Olave?
Yeah, I know.
Glad's my guy.
I don't know. I don't know. Genuinely, I don't know. Not Olave. but maybe boring, but I don't know.
Here's the problem, Winger. I don't watch enough Salt Lake every week to know, but I just went through their last couple games. I have absolutely no idea who half their players are. And Pablo, they could be great players, but Pablo is getting the best out of this team. And it's really, really impressive because, like you said, your team from 08 to 2013 was the cream of the crop in MLS, right?
But we weren't in first place like this often. Maybe
for me, that's down to coaching and that's down to motivation. And Pablo, he doesn't really seem like he wants to complicate X's and O's. He's just a grit, hard.
No, he's an incredible leader.
And when you have that, it's kind of in the Ben Olsen mode. And Ben Olsen is starting to get the best. And Houston's not great right now, but he got the best out of them last year going into this year. So I just wanted to give Pablo his flowers because he deserves it. And then Gargs, pretty bad from you all around, but I do have to credit your Vancouver pick. No, honestly, because I'm a big fan of Vancouver, and I really like what Vancouver's done in the West the last couple years. Vanni Sartini, for me, this guy is absolutely electric. All his press conferences are must watch. He's got at least one or two quotes every week where you just absolutely fall in love with the guy more. And he seems to be tactically really astute. He was kind of on the 3-4-3, 3-5-2 train. Even before Nancy, Vancouver played in that three center back system and he did it pretty well. And I think they've started to perfect it a little bit and they are now being talked about as one of the favorites in the West. And so I think that was a really shrewd pick by you. And then on the other side of it, Seattle. I mean, we've touched on Seattle a little bit, but they just seem kind of stuck in the mud, even though they got a big win against Philly. I watched the game against the Galaxy in Seattle and there was not much in the game, man. There's just not much in it. I think Rui Diaz actually looks a little bit refreshed and he looks a little better, but they don't have a lot going forward. They don't have enough going forward right now. And Jordan Morris doesn't seem to be contributing in the stat column, right? You have Christian Roldan plugging holes all over the field, playing center mid, playing right back, playing right winger, right? And so listen, I don't know what your take on Seattle is, Wing, but we've talked about them a little bit, and for how great of a job Schmetzer's done, like has the message gotten a little bit stale, right? And so I watched the game against the Galaxy, and they just seem like they need something. They need an attacking spark somewhere.
Here's the overall theme of talking through, I think, our picks. What I would probably say is I didn't give enough consideration to the cadence of these teams' evolutions, right? Like I think that you have Oscar Pereira in Orlando. That's a strong voice that has been there, that rode that team maybe to its completion. And now, you're going into a new kind of cycle with him where players probably do need to cycle out and you're essentially at the beginning of it. Similar to New England, like that team just could have been done. And to what Gordo was saying, that, they probably, just because they're good players, it might be time to move on from quite a few of them and they need to go through a window. The Seattle one for me though, I don't know. I had questions about Seattle when they were signing their players. They brought in the young DP and there was a big question mark that still we went through this, right? We talked about, well, if Schmetzer doesn't know where he's going to play him because he doesn't even know who he is as a player, it seems like an odd signing. It also seemed like an odd answer. And they're another team that doesn't really have an identity. And you're now looking at a group that just because they're, quote unquote, one of the sexier picks, they're not getting results. They don't get results. They're just kind of out there. They're just kind of boring. And for a Seattle Sounders group, that's a weird thing to say at this point in their evolution, but it might be time for them too. It might be time for them to cycle through and start changing.
What's the toughest part about being a journeyman in a new city?
Well, Gordo, you know this as well as I do. Being a journeyman in a new city or a city that you're staying in is always difficult. The uncertainty of the future. Are you going to stay? Are you going to go somewhere else? Back in 2020 with Nashville SC, when we had a brand new team, everyone coming to a new city, there was only one person that we trusted to get our real estate needs done, and that's Erin Mishu with Fikes Realty Group. She made everything perfect, flawless, seamless. We had absolutely no issues getting into our house here in Nashville, and all my teammates felt the same way. You can check Erin out at majorleague-realestate.com.
If you had to pick, put your money on one group in the Western Conference, Gordo, do you have a pick Do you have a lock for where you'd place your money?
No, I don't. I don't. I would
Just for clarity's sake, top 4 in the Western Conference right now: Real Salt Lake, followed by Minnesota without their star number 10, followed by the LA Galaxy, who finished in 257th place last year, and the Vancouver Whitecaps. That's your top 4 in the West.
Yeah. So I mean, if you look at 2 through 6, right? Minnesota, LA, Vancouver, Colorado, Austin, right? Like those guys, all those teams were at the bottom, to my earlier point. So if I was to pick somebody, I'm still going to pick LAFC. Okay. I think they have the deepest squad. I still think they have tons of quality. They just, I think over the span of 32 games or whatever they're playing now, I think they're going to come. And these teams, I'm happy for where they are. Like Austin, great to see Wolf get this team back to winning, right? You kind of root for coaches like that have been struggling, and he was given an extra year, whether you want to say it or not. I mean, that was a bold decision to keep him on, in my opinion, with a fan base like theirs. Colorado's been doing great. Happy for Armas. I don't know what the hell Vancouver's doing. Go ahead, Dax.
I was just curious who was on Colorado from the beginning of the season. Anyone in the Journeymen?
Probably Armas.
No one in the Journeymen was on Colorado to be better and make the playoffs from no.
Well, be better isn't saying much.
Yeah, be better. How better?
They finished in 253rd, and you picked them to be better than that. So yeah, Dax, well done, dude.
Oh, so it was me that picked them to be better. Good, okay. You guys didn't, but that's fine.
So to wrap it up, Gargs, LAFC. Okay, everything remains tight the whole way in the MLS. I mean, there's only 7-8 points separating St. Louis in 9th in the last playoff spot than our RSL. So it's a couple wins here and a couple losses, and everything's going to get mixed up. But I think LAFC would be my pick.
Wing, you got somebody in the West that you're going to put your money on? Are you going to ride Salt Lake until the end just because you're a Salt Lake homer?
I'm going to say 2 things. One is I hate to agree with them, but of my picks that I already had in there, I would go with LAFC because I agree with Gordo. So of my 3, which they were 1, I'm going to go with them. I hope Dallas proves me wrong, but they haven't shown much to say that that's going to be a major change. I will say that I don't know that they'll finish in first, but I will say that RSL has me a believer with Pablo. And just to touch on our last comment, they have a couple of guys who have really done an unbelievable job and stood out. One is the kid, I think it's Emeka, but Anelli is been playing the 6. He came in.
He's their 6, right?
He was like a pseudo right back, and it wasn't starting. And all of a sudden, Pablo's got him playing a 6, and he's been phenomenal. And to the question earlier, I think aside from Chicho, I mean, look, he's still. I'm not going to say he's going to start over Beckerman. Now that would just be crazy talk. But to that question earlier, Dax, I think the only other guys is possibly Jay Glad would be right there, and then the outside back. I hate to say it, but both my guy Brody is doing well again, and this Greek guy that they brought in has scored a couple bangers. Wow. He has more goals in like 5 games than I had my whole career. So that might be the only other spot that guys would be starting.
Well, if you're playing against Boanga, then yeah, I'm putting Brody in over you because Brody's gonna smoke you in a foot race. First of all right.
Again, Dax going out on a limb here with all these crazy ideas.
Listen, I am the hard hitting analysis guy always. All right.
But yeah, I will say that he's got me a believer. And I mean, I just remember that year where I think they ended up, I feel like I brought this up on the pod a while back, but I think they ended up actually finishing 2nd, but they were in 1st the whole year when Pablo was at Colorado. And like their player personnel was nobody. It was crazy.
That's what I was going to say about Pablo is there a guy that has done more with less his entire coaching career? And when or what do you think he would do if he had a squad? And I'm not disrespecting his past or current players. I'm not. But if he had a stout roster, what would a guy like this do?
He's with an ownership group that spends.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Dax, to your point, myself, Gordo, Wingert, all have had very close relationship with Pablo in terms of being in a locker with him, whether we were teammates or he was a coach or whatever. And he is, in my estimation, one of the best leaders, if not the best leader that I've ever been around. And I mean, it is easy to call him that. I'd put him up with anybody that I've ever been around. And he does, I think, get exactly what Gordo was saying in terms of you would run through a wall after he told you that it's a brick wall and it will hurt. You would still go and run through it for him.
Right.
Or with him. That's the other thing, is he'd be trying to gnaw through the bricks right next to you. And that's why he gets the things that he does out of his team.
Gordo, we live in crazy times right now. What are things looking like in the real estate market?
Oh, Dax, you know that rates are always going to be the best with Synergy One lending, and those are always going to fluctuate. But one thing that never fluctuates, that's the service you get with Erin from Fikes Realty Group. She is the #1 agent I will refer all my clients to. She handles all the obstacles up front, really takes the stress out of any transaction and move that you have. Check out my girl, Erin Mishu with Fikes Realty Group at majorleague-realestate.com.
All right, guys, the pod just got much better. We lost Gargs to some technical difficulties. He's gonna have to fire his IT guy, not Statman Jack, because Statman Jack is nowhere near him. Anyways, let me give you guys my take on the West, and then we'll move to the East. A team that I'm rocking with, we already talked about them a little bit, but it's Vancouver for sure. I think that they're dominant at home and they get results on the road. I think that they've got a way to play. I think they've got a great system. Their coach gets the best out of them. I think Brian White, I don't know. I mean, Wing, you saw him play a bunch up there in New York. The fact that the Red Bulls traded this guy away for what they traded him for. I think he's a difficult guy to predict how it was going to be, right? College guy comes through, but I look at the amount of strikers Red Bull has gone through since BWP and Brian White, while not the same kind of profile of player, I mean, he scores goals at an incredible rate, especially in MLS. And that was a slam dunk home run signing by Vancouver. And he has been worth every penny and more. And I'd be shocked if Vancouver does not make him an extremely highly paid striker. I think if Brian White was smart, I don't think he's going to ask for DP money, but he has been as productive as some DPs in this league. That's a fact. So for me, Vancouver has Ryan Gauld as a fantastic playmaker. They've got a great goal scorer in Brian White, and I think they've got a good structure behind them. I think they're going to do big things in the West. One thing I want the Journeymen to keep an eye on, we've talked about Cascadia a lot. I don't think things are going too well up there in Portland. They started pretty hot. They were scoring goals. They have 2 wins on the year. And Phil Neville had a little press conference after their most recent loss to Charlotte where, I mean, I like Phil Neville because he just kind of calls it how he sees it. But he kind of went in and said there will be changes. He's like, I have seen some things that I haven't been happy with and I've let it slide, but I'm not going to let it slide anymore. And I will be making changes. And I don't know if that's formation. I don't know if that's personnel. It kind of sounds like to me he's going personnel changes. And I'll be curious to see how Portland does these next couple of weeks because I imagine, you want to win, of course, but I don't think you go and talk about things like that unless you're either overly too honest, which I think he is, but also I love it. It's refreshing. Or if you're feeling a little pressure. So, I think he's maybe not as urgent as Caleb Porter, but I think Neville is got some things to iron out in Portland on his hands. That's just my take. I don't know if you guys have a quick thought on Portland.
Gordo, both of us are good friends with Ned. I don't know if you've spoken to him at all, Gordo. We haven't spoken with that stuff, just a couple messages back and forth that were nothing to do with that. But I will say, I thought that was a very surprising hire when Neville went out there, and obviously you saw the reaction from the fans, right? So yeah, that'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. I think jury is still out, for at least for me.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to Ned. You know why? Because now he's a GM of a Major League Soccer club, and all my friends and past teammates that become GMs, they go silent. They don't answer.
I'm so
phone
glad
calls.
you said that. Now I don't take it personally.
You're a media personality. You run a mildly, very lowly successful podcast that a couple hundred people listen to.
Maybe that's it, man.
That's gotta be it.
I'm like, hey, I don't even want anything from you guys. I'm not trying to get players. Like, just give a guy a call back, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, dude, the first game of the year, they came out hot, man. We were like, okay.
Yeah.
It just hasn't happened for them. I haven't seen many games since that first game. I watched it. They looked like they were going to be aggressive and attacking minded and all those things. But this guy, Anthony, who was, I think he scored a brace on that first night. He only has 3 goals to date, 10 games, 3 goals. So, yeah, something's going on there. And I agree. I
can't figure out this Ander guy either. Sometimes I think he's great. Sometimes I don't.
Yep. Yeah. I think he's been really good this year. I think he's been really consistent. But look, they just dropped. I mean, I don't know. They just dropped $5-6 million on a striker from that was playing in Mexico, Cabecita.
Yeah.
And I think he scored 1 or 2 goals. But you know, they've been kind of playing him on the wing and then up top, and I'd be curious to see. I mean, you got to get the best out of this guy, right? It's not like they haven't opened up the purse strings to go and sign players for a lot of money. So I'll be curious to see if they can get the best out of him these next couple of weeks, because obviously he's not young, right? He's a type of player that you sign if you're trying to win now. He's not a project like De La Vega in Seattle. He is we need to win now guy. And this was the final piece we were missing. And now it hasn't gone well in terms of results. I don't know. I don't want to just put it all on Cabecita, but it hasn't really gone well in terms of results. So that's kind of my take on. I want to keep an eye on Portland because they're heading in the wrong.
100%.
Let's move to.
And he's got to be on the hot seat. I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any way around it. Just because, and this is not my personal thing, but when the fans come out and they're so vocal to start, you got to win. And now they're going to be calling for his head pretty. You would think pretty aggressively.
Well, I think there's one more thing to add to that too, Gordo. Sorry, Dex. I was just going to say is when you're coming off of losing a job, it's slightly different, right?
Right.
If you're coming off of having done an unbelievable job somewhere and you're almost getting like a promotion in a sense, right, to this new club, maybe they give you a little bit more of a long leash.
Good point.
When that's not the case, your fans have already from the get-go come out and not been happy with the choice. There's that extra added pressure to the front office and the ownership, right?
Definitely something to keep an eye on. All right, let's go to the East. I'm guessing you guys are both going to say Columbus. So I'm not allowing, let's make this more interesting. You guys are not allowed to say Columbus and you're not allowed to say Cincinnati. You've got to give me another team that's going to break into the top 3 in the East, because I think we can all agree that. And I know, Wing, you wanted to touch on Columbus and Wilfred Nancy a little bit, and we can in a second. I just want you guys to give me, Gordo, I'll start with you, one team from the East that you're really impressed with and you think is going to go on to continue to get good results and finish maybe top 3 or 4 in the East.
Well, Columbus isn't in the top 3, so we're going to pick them.
Yeah, but they're dealing with CCC, so relax. They will be.
You know what? Like I said, I haven't watched a ton of East Coast, but when I know Red Bulls just got smacked by Miami. But I would pick them. I think they've had a good run of the season so far, set aside that one game. I think they have some good little players, young players. So I would choose for them to stay kind of in that hunt and tick back up into the top 3. That would be my choice.
Wayne?
I'm going to say either Philadelphia or, can't believe I'm going to do this, but our boy Dax in Atlanta. I don't see Red Bull staying up there. I'll be really surprised if we're looking at the end of the season and they're in the top three. Toronto is such an interesting one for me. I don't know what to think. I really don't. I'm rooting for them because our boy Jason Hernandez is up there, who's one of my favorite guys, and I just want him to be successful. But I change my mind every time I watch them. I do. I don't even know where to begin with that. And I can't say that I have a lot of faith in like their guys being there long term and digging in and really, do you know what I mean? Like whether they're league leaders and the Italian guys are kicking butt and are top of the stat sheet wouldn't surprise me, or if they both leave in the summer, it wouldn't surprise me. So I just don't even know what to think. But yeah, I think Philadelphia to me is almost in that sense a boring pick. And what I mean by that is they're like steady Eddie. They have a couple games in hand, I think, still, and they just been they grind out results. Their tactics and their style with basically the same players has proven that they can win in this league. And I think they will. I don't think they're going to blow anybody out of the water, but I think they'll just continue to be consistent. And I do think, I'll admit, I've only seen you guys play a full game twice so far, Dax, but I think, a couple of little things could go your way that would change a lot. And I don't really trust a few of the teams that are ahead of you guys. So
that's why we let you on this pod, because you're a smart,
you're
a smart guy. You're a logical, smart guy. You know your stuff. I don't doubt that. I think you're right. And what kind of guy would I be if I didn't back my own team, right? And we are struggling right now. We talked about it a little bit on the previous pod. There are, I think, some things that we need to fix and we need to right, and I think we will do that. So I think it's easy to see that, like, right now, Miami is the class of the league. I think it's easy to see that Columbus, once they're done with CCC and once they bring that continental title back to MLS, I think that they're going to be very strong. I think that they're going to be difficult. Cincinnati will be up there. And I think Atlanta, I think we're going to turn things around. So, I'm backing us. I'm backing our boys. And I've got confidence that we'll get out of it.
Dax, just
too much quality not to. Too much quality.
Yeah. And to touch on your point with Columbus, this is one of the major differences for me with them versus some of these other teams that we're a little uncertain about. It's not just about them getting some results. It's how they're doing it.
Yeah.
Right. If you haven't been, which we all have, of course, for the listeners who haven't been down in Mexico to play against a Liga MX team in an important game and go down on the score sheet early on and hang in there and fight back and come back to win multiple times is so impressive. It's hard to even,
bro, not
really
just fight back, bro, dominate the second half.
It's 100% because of the way they play, right? And that's, again, the difference between some of these teams that are maybe top of the league now or in the top few spots, and they found a way to grind out results. And there's something to be said for that. But what Columbus is doing, it's the way they're playing. And one of the only ways that you can withstand that storm that is inevitable, that's going to come from these Liga MX teams, especially in Mexico, is by playing the way they play, where they're able to just calm the game down because of their possession and the fluidity that they have, guys changing positions, taking up different spots, and everybody having to be comfortable on the ball. It's like, I'm just so impressed. And
they're not intimidated and they're not scared.
Not in the least. You have a 22-year-old goalkeeper who makes what seemed to be, a massive error down in one of the hardest places it is to play in Mexico, and to hang in there, the whole team, and keep that belief, come back. He ends up being the star in the penalties, Schulte. And then for it to happen again against Monterrey, to go down 1-0, that 9 times out of 10, what happens? You guys both know that game ends up 5-0. The Mexican team, 5-6-0, right?
Yep.
Like what Philadelphia. That's the difference.
Yes.
In MLS can grind out results, and the way that they play down there, if you get under it, it can turn into 3, 4, 5 really quick. Whereas with Columbus, they were able to settle both games now. So anyway, I just wanted it's been so impressive what they're doing. And Wilfred Nancy, never met him in my life. The guy is fantastic. I'm his biggest fan.
No, you're not wrong, Wing. And I think we want to end the pod on this, and this thought is like kind of what I touched on a little bit earlier, is that you guys know as well as I do that soccer in general as a sport, and maybe all sports, I don't want to speak about other sports, but for sure soccer, it's a copycat game, man. What happened when Pep Guardiola was like, you know what I'm going to do? You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to throw a fullback in the midfield. And I'm going to start building out in a back three. Let me just see how that works. And then boom, it's a revelation. He won the league. And then it was like unbelievable. All these other teams started doing the same thing. What Wilfred Nancy's doing, I see it in so many different teams now in MLS because people just think they can replicate it. And because it's so successful. And we know that that's not always the case. But for the most part, it's been so impressive. He plays with one center back. He plays with one true center back, Camacho. Moreira, he's a fullback. Amundsen, he's a fullback. I'm sitting there thinking, this is so aggressive. And the way he uses his front three, you see it now all over the world. And it's incredible to me. And it's not, obviously, Nancy is not, like people in Germany aren't watching Columbus and changing their formations for him. But I see it in MLS and I'm like, okay, the second team coach for Columbus goes to Montreal. Montreal plays the same way, right? Cincy, they play the same way, but they do it a little bit differently, right? They just do it a little bit differently. They play with more traditional strikers. But what I'm trying to get at is that MLS, for me, we all came into the league early 2000s, mid 2000s. Every single team played a 4-4-2, right? The same way, okay?
But right before that, Dax, I have to tell you, Gordo and I are a little older than you. Gordo, what were the good teams playing? So the 3-5-2, remember? It was a big
Oh,
game.
yeah.
You were doing that Columbus.
New England.
DC in New England.
New England? Okay. So there was a little 3-5-2 there. 4-4-2 came back. What happened when Salt Lake went on a little bit of run?
The Diamonds.
Diamond. And not a lot of people could replicate the diamond, but diamond. Now I see so many teams now. Toronto, 3 in the back. Cincinnati, Columbus, Montreal, Minnesota. We just played Minnesota.
But wasn't Toronto doing 3 in the back with Vanny first?
No, I don't think so.
When they won?
They did a little bit. They did a little bit, but that was, I think, more injury related than anything because Vanny's preferred formation was always a 4-3-3. Always. So, yes.
Yeah, he had 4 in the back because it was Mavinga and what's his name is next to him?
Drew Moore. So look, the only thing I want to say is that to see the level of coaching, I think in MLS, to see how far it's come, and to see that you can still have a guy like Pablo who can win with simple tactics and extreme motivation. And then you have a guy like Nancy or a guy like Pat Noonan come in and have tactical discipline and fluidity and players that are able to play multiple positions and get the best out of guys in different ways. It's really fun. It's really fun to be a part of MLS right now. I think it's probably fun for you guys to watch it and probably fun for you, Chris, to be able to sit there and say like, okay, like what young players, how can they succeed? By being positionally flexible, by having a good mentality, you probably, when you think about where you hope your young players end up, you probably think, I really want these guys to end up in some of these places where there's good young coaches, right? And coaches that can get the best out of young players. Like for me, that was not the case in MLS 15 years ago. If you were a young player in MLS, if you were a homegrown player or a Generation Adidas player, you went through preseason, you got put with the reserves, didn't matter how good you were, and your coach just said, look, you got to pay your dues. Now I see teenagers on the field every weekend. And it's a really impressive thing to be a part of a league that's gone through such a change and such a tactical shift. And I feel like for the most part, you have a couple games that are boring as hell, right? Like that just are snooze fest. And I think every league goes through that. But for the most part, there's tactical battles and there's fun little in-game adjustments that are being made and new players popping up every weekend where you're like, who is this guy? Right? And so it's fun to be a part of the league right now, man. That's all I had to say.
Look at Cincinnati, obviously won Sports Shield last year. They're doing fantastically well again. Look at their entire staff.
Yep.
Chris Albright, Hunter Freeman, Pat Noonan, Jeff Lorenowitz.
Dominic Kinnear, Kenny Arena.
Think of Kenny Arena. Think of all those guys, right? Dom, in a sense, is a little bit of an outlier because he's humble enough to take an assistant job when he's won multiple championships as head coach. And, you know, it's fantastic for their staff. But the rest of that staff, they're all like our age and younger. How cool is that? They're breaking down barriers for, you know, these ownerships are not going to say, oh, we can't hire, you know, a young guy for the front office. They don't have the experience. They're going to be able to do a job. We can't hire that guy for our coaching staff. It's so cool. Not just, you know, I'm not even on that side, but I just love seeing it because I think it's fantastic for guys like us, but for the next generation of guys to come in and say, hey, look at all these positions that guys have not only got the opportunity at, but been successful.
Amen to that. Final thought, Gordo? What's going on in that mustache? Can you hear me?
I got you, bro. No final thought. I just love being on this with you, on the pod with you guys. Wings, it's always a pleasure being on here. Dax, I gotta say, dude, I like you as a host probably more.
I was gonna say it probably went a little smoother with me. I gotta be honest.
It's one of those, like, you know, it's one of those, we're talking coaches right now in the MLS. It's just one of those things where like you run out of players and then you just like move one of your reserves. You're like, hey, I know you're a center back, but play in the middle. And then it just works out, dude. Like this just worked out. You're playing the number 9 right now and you're doing fantastic.
Dude, I appreciate that. I'm really digging it. I think we may, you know, Gargs' his contract is coming up. I think we may have to have some discussions, maybe a role change for him if he's willing to take it.
I'll be a witness. I will be a witness.
Wing?
A little pay cut for Gargs.
It could happen, especially he's going to take a pay cut for sure, especially if his internet keeps acting like this.
he gets to stay on though, with just a little pay cut.
Yeah. Wing, it's always a pleasure, man. Thank you for joining us. To everybody who listens and subscribes, pass it along to your friends. We're doing this every week. So thanks for listening, and we'll see y'all next week.
Thanks for having me, guys.